What is going on, guys? We are back playing some more Surviving with Create. And today, guys, we are going to be setting up an automated quarry, which I think is going to be one of the coolest builds, if not the coolest build, that we have set up in this entire series. Now, unfortunately, this is also probably going to be one of the most complicated things that we've set up in the entire series, but that's not always bad considering I know a lot of you guys tend to like the more complicated builds. Now, because it is more complicated, I'm going to warn you guys ahead of time, this is most likely going to be a longer, more in-depth episode. And the reason behind that is because not only is it more complicated, but this is going to be pretty much a completely customizable build. Much like a lot of the other sort of movable contraptions we've made, like the farm outside we can see right there, there's a lot of different components that go into it that can be changed depending on what you want it to do, how large you want it to be, things like that. And this is no different. So when we set this up today, you can consider the video sort of like a template or guidelines on how to do it, and we'll go over all the reasons behind the choices I'm making, but you definitely don't need to follow it all the way down to the minute details. It'll work fine if you do, it'll be amazing if you do, but if you want to make it bigger, smaller, faster, anything like that, you can adjust it. So we're going to go over all the reasons behind the different components so that you have the knowledge to work with if you do choose to sort of customize it and make it your own. So we got to jump into this because there's a ton of stuff that we have to go over today and build. So this chest right here is relatively full, but thankfully, if you've been watching the series, we've pretty much worked with every single one of the components we're going to use today. So nothing's going to be new jumping out at us. We're just going to be combining them in a little bit of a different way. So the first things that we have in here are going to be the mechanical bearing, radial chassis, a lever, some wool, and some oak logs. And if this looks familiar to you, that's because all those blocks right there are going to be used to make a windmill. We made it a couple episodes ago, so if you're curious about that, feel free to go check that episode out. It's very simple to make, and it's going to supply us with all the rotational power that we need for this setup, which is great because you really don't need it to be super quick, but you're going to need it to support a fair amount of stress. Now, we also are going to have mechanical drills and linear chassis, which are going to be the main component that's going to allow us to actually build the quarry. So the quarry itself isn't really that expensive. These are going to vary greatly depending on the size that you want to be clearing out. But then we're also going to have the miscellaneous components that are going to be the complex part that allows us to move this and automate it. So we're going to have things like shafts, a sticky mechanical piston extension poles, which will vary depending again on how big you want it to be, encased belts, which will vary in quantity. We're going to have adjustable repeaters, powered toggle latch, adjustable pulse repeater, one rope pulley, a gear shift, a sequenced gear shift, large cogwheel and regular cogwheel for increasing the speed. It's going to still be really slow, but we're going to increase it a little bit from the windmill. A button, a slime ball for making stuff sticky, some chests to store all the stuff in, a redstone contact or two of them, and then some redstone dust. Now that's pretty much all that we're going to need. I don't think we missed anything. Now these are also not in any specific quantities. We're probably going to have a little bit extra of some of them with what I'm setting up. But remember again that you do not need to follow this as an exact build. You can vary it depending on what you want, which is why I wasn't too concerned with making sure everything was the exact value. Unlike a lot of mods with their multi-block structures where you need a specific amount of everything, this is completely different. You can vary it however you want. And since we are going to be traveling a little bit, we're actually going to be bringing a bed with us because it's actually almost nighttime. So we should probably wait before we head out so I can sleep here because we're going to be setting this quarry up a little bit away from the base because we're going to be clearing out large areas. And since we have things underground, I really don't want to run into those when we're clearing them out. And on top of that, the terrain around here is really not that great for setting one of these up. The sort of more hilly areas and basically anything that's not a plains is a little bit annoying to set this up in. So we can hop back inside and just wait until it's nighttime. I died 2 times off camera, which is why we lost a ton of levels. So not really looking to die again for the 3rd time in like a day. But I'm pretty excited to set this up. I spent forever getting everything worked out in my test world. So once it was done, I was super excited. I think I finally finished it at like 2 in the morning last night because I wanted to make sure I could record it today, but it's been the main hindrance behind recording the next Create episode. If you guys were curious why it took so long to get here and you didn't see in my last video, I basically said it's because getting this worked out, the logic behind it, and all that has taken quite some time. So just yeah, heads up for the amount of time that went into actually setting all of this up. But we're going to run over here, and it should bring us out in a relatively flat area, not too far away from the base, but I want to make sure that we've got a nice, large, clean area to work with so that, we can see everything easily. We don't need to do any, terraforming or anything to make this usable. So right over here. Okay, so we had a little bit of a loading error when we came over here, but I hopped off the world, hopped back on, and it seems like everything is good to go now. We've got a nice flat area to work with over here, and we should be good to start building. But before we jump into that, I just want to say that this is completely based off of MonkeyFarm's build. He did a expandable, movable quarry, and it is going to be very similar to this. The only differences are going to come in sort of the size and shape of how things are made, and then the entire automation behind it is basically why I'm making this video, and that's to improve upon it since there are a lot of different ways that you can automate this a little bit more than he did, where you're constantly having to flip levers and push buttons. We're playing modded Minecraft. We want to make things as automated as possible. So I thought, why not? And we're going to be using some of those redstone things that we grabbed out earlier that create offers to make it very easy to automate it. So I just want to give credit where credit is due before we jump into this. It's a phenomenal video he has on it, and I would highly recommend you guys go and check that out. But now we're going to jump into this because, like I said earlier, we've got a ton of stuff to get through. So the first thing that we are going to make right up here at the highest point we're going to be working with, since we're clearing out the area over here, is going to be the actual platform that does the mining. So we're going to build up a couple blocks. We're going to go up 4 into the air, and we are going to start building the platform, which we are going to make 2 by 12. And the reason we're doing that, instead of making it more of a square platform, which tends to be what people go with, is because we are only able to move this system in one direction. So in our case, we are going to be moving it to the left, and we can also move it back to the right, but we're going to be clearing out to the left. And it is important, to me at least, that we clear out the most area possible. So when you're only able to move it to the left, let's say you go to the left 10 blocks. If yours is 5 wide, you're going to mine that 2 times. If yours is 2 wide, you're going to mine it 5 times. Both times, you're going to clear out the same length. They're both going to clear out in that direction the same length. The question is, how far in the other direction away from us is it going to clear out? And we'll just sleep right now while we discuss this. But that's really the main concern is, of course, the direction you are not moving in, away from us in this case. We want to clear out as far as we can in that direction. And so if you want to use the same number of resources, you are going to want to make it extremely long, but not extremely wide. The actual smallest we can make it with this setup is going to be a width of 2. And the reason behind that is we have to make sure that every single block that we have used in the movement part that's going to be traveling down with this has a drill below it. So while it is possible to make it just 1 wide and have it run, you will have to have a single 2 wide portion of it at the very beginning to make it function, so it looks a little bit weird if you don't make the whole thing 2 wide. So that's kind of the gist behind why we're making it this size. You can make it as wide as you want, you can make it as long as you want, that doesn't matter. But in my opinion, you want to make it basically 2 wide and then extremely long, so that you can get the most bang for your buck with your resources and actually have your quarry clear out the biggest area possible. And we just got to build this out 12, and this is going to be a little bit of a pain because it's pretty high in the air right now. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that 7? Apparently I can't count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And make sure we can actually jump and place this stuff down properly. 8, 9. I should grab out, actually, we should have some cobble in the inventory now because I was messing around with this. We should be able to just build up here and place this down. What is that, 10? Oh, you can't hold shift when you place these. That's the most annoying thing. If you're worried about falling off something, you cannot hold shift when you place these. So I believe that right there is 11. Then I think we got one more to go, and we'll have our entire mining platform. So I think that there should be 24 of these placed total. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So there we go. We've got the entire mining platform, which is 24 total. And we are now going to make these sticky and place down every mechanical drill we have on each of these facing down. And you want to make sure you are careful to only click on each of these once, because if you click on them twice, once it's already sticky, when you click a second time, it's going to make the other side sticky. And we do not really want that. It's going to look a little bit weird. Eventually, certain ones will be made sticky on the other side, but we're not going to do that right now. So you have to make sure that you make these sticky. Otherwise, once the system starts moving, you're going to run into an issue where the drills will not go with it when it comes back up. So you're going to want to make sure that you're making these sticky properly as we build this. You can always come back if you realize you made a mistake. It's just a little bit annoying sometimes to do later on. So there we go. We now have the mining platform. This is the area that's going to be mined out in terms of the length of this. So we're going to be going out 12 blocks. Not too bad of an area, honestly. You can go out further if you want, but of course, I'm not going to use a crazy amount of mechanical drills here. We're trying to be slightly cost effective. Next thing we need to do is make the portion of the system that's going to transport it to the left and the right. So we're going to build up again, and I'm going to come up over here on the side of this, and eventually I'll put down ladders over here so that we can work. But what we're going to be doing is building off of this block right here, because we're going to put down the rope pulley. If we have that right here on this inner corner block right here, we can rotate it so that it actually faces the correct direction. Apparently it doesn't want to rotate. Do we have the wrench in like the wrong mode? There we go. Okay, I was clicking on the wrong face of it. So there we go. We want it to be facing this direction. We want the rotational power to be able to be input from this side right here. And the reason we want to put this down here is because when this system moves on this horizontal rotational power transportation system, we want to make sure that every increment that it stops at, it is receiving rotational power to this shaft right here in the rope pulley. So we need to make sure that at every interval of 2, since this is moving 2, and the interval is whatever width you are actually having for this setup, so in this case it's 2, if it was 3, it would be every interval of 3, that you have some form of shaft to bring the rotational power to this so it's capable of lowering itself down. So we're going to make it out of encased belts. And the reason we're doing this is because you do have the option of using regular mechanical belts, but there are 2 pitfalls with that. One, in this setup, we're transporting redstone on top of these encased belts eventually. You're not able to do that with mechanical belts, so these act as actual blocks that we can run a redstone line of dust on top of. So while you could get around that, it makes it significantly easier to just use these. You also run into the issue where if you want to make this very long and go over, I think it's like 25 blocks, you are not going to be able to use a single mechanical belt. You're going to have to switch and input a second mechanical belt and connect the two so that you can continue the belt going down the line, because belts do have a maximum distance. The encased belts do not run into that issue. The main point behind using these, though, is the redstone. So what we can do is set this up right here, and we are just going to run a line down this system. Oh, and we're running into the same issue with shift clicking it down. So we're going to run this down, and can we rotate these? Why do they always rotate so weird? There we go. So we're going to run this down, and we'll go maybe, 8-10 blocks down this system. Just as an example, you're probably going to want to, if you run a quarry, for an extended period of time, the portion that's going to determine how it actually, how long it actually goes is really going to be the distance of these belts. So making it longer, if this is kind of a long-term, plan for you, is probably a better idea. So how many do we have there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there we go. We want to make sure in this case that we're having it at intervals of 2. So once we get to 10, that means that we will have 5 different increments where this moves. Obviously, this is not a huge quarry to clear out, but again, it's also nothing to scoff at. This will be a lot of blocks that come from this, and so we'll use this as a good example. Let's get out the ladders so we can come back up here. and we can go over the important part of this. So as you can see, the reason that the encased belts are nice is because each one of them has an internal shaft. So once we supply rotational power to 1, it doesn't matter actually what increment we're moving this at, since we're moving over 2, but if it was 3, 4, 5, they would all work because you have a shaft at each one to bring rotational power to this, which is great. So now that we have all that set up, we are going to have to actually start setting up the movement portion of this, which means we are going to have to break out the sticky pistons, the linear chassis again, and start getting to what I would consider a slightly more complicated portion of this. So we're going to come above where this rope pulley is, and we're going to put down a linear chassis. We're going to flip it, and then we're going to put down another linear chassis, and then we're actually going to break this one right here, and we are going to make this one sticky and then place this one back down and rotate it. Now, the important part to note is that when we look up here, you can see that it highlights these 2 blocks below it, and it only highlights these 2. So we want to make sure that this system up here is going to be holding this chassis right here and the rope pulley, because this is what's going to be moving the system from left to right. And when it eventually goes down, this bottom part's going to drop down and do the mining. This part's going to stay still. But when it moves left to right, we need to make sure that the part the piston is moving, which is going to be up here, is moving the rope pulley in the system down here. Now, one important thing to note, and I ran into this, and it's why it took me a very long time to actually get this setup working in the test world, is in one of the updates. Anything in 1.14, but before, I want to say 2.2b, is going to have an issue with this. And it's because there was a bug with moving the rotation or the rope pulley using mechanical pistons. And if you got rid of the pulley, everything would move. But by having the pulley there, it wouldn't. So if you run into an issue where you think the setup's completely correct and it's not moving, look at the version of the game that you have. You may need to update it, because that is a common issue for people, and it was a bug that they eventually fixed. So just so you don't run into the same issues I did, keep that in mind. Now we're going to put down one additional linear chassis, and this is where we're going to put down the sticky piston. So we'll put it down right there, and we are going to rotate it. If we can actually rotate the face of it, it only goes that way. So let's get up here so we can actually rotate this. This is the one thing that's such a pain. When you're actually assembling this in a non-creative world, it is a huge pain to get it facing the proper direction. And now the side the rotational setup is on is messed up. Okay, let me get this sticky piston back so we can start again. Let's just go up here. It does not want to orient itself properly. And then we can place it down just like that, and hopefully properly rotate the face of it so that it faces into this machine. There we go. So it's a sticky piston. You need to make sure it's sticky. And the reason being, we want to be able to pull this setup back eventually if we'd like to gather. If you have a really long quarry, you're going to want to be able to pull it back so that you do not need to worry about running all the way across to get your loot from it. So we've got the sticky mechanical piston here, and we're going to have to put down the piston extension poles. And the number of these is going to be determined by the number of encased belts you have. It should pretty much directly correspond to that. As you can see, the piston starting here after it extends 1 is going to extend it 1 belt. So we're going to want to make sure that we put down that many, and we're just going to walk out. So we got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So there we go. I think we went 10 actually. There we go. So we got 10 of these, which means it's going to be capable of extending 10. We're just going to sleep real quick, then we can jump back into it. But it's going to be capable of extending 10 to the left so that it's able to bring it all the way out down our system. So now we're able to actually extend this, but we're going to have to extend it at intervals. And the way that we're able to do that is using the sequenced gear shift, which is going to go right here and is going to be the manager basically of the rotational power being input into the sticky mechanical piston. Now, if you've never used a sequenced gear shift before, it's essentially going to have almost like code in it that sort of gives it an order of what to do. So we're going to want it to be set to piston, and then we are going to want the distance set to be whatever interval distance is the width of our system. So in our case, it's going to be 2 meters, 2 blocks. Every time this gets a new redstone signal, it is going to fire it and move the piston 2 blocks in that direction. Now, the direction is going to, I think we're going to have to adjust it potentially based on the rotational direction of our windmill, which will be going back over here. But for now, we won't have to shift this. You can change the speed and direction of it. This will also be what you adjust when you want to bring the system back. But now that we have that, we have the input set up for this whenever it's good to go. And this is what we're going to use the automated redstone to control. This is one of the parts that we're going to use for that. The next thing we're going to have to do is down here, we are going to be putting the regular gear shift, if we grab that out. And the reason we're doing that is because we are going to be using redstone on that part for the second portion of this setup. And the reason that is important is because this is going to allow us to simply switch the direction of rotation. And if we switch the direction, it's going to adjust if the rope pulley is bringing the system up or is letting it go down. And it'll adjust it for the entire system, so we only need one right here. And this is where the second half of the redstone is going to go at the end, will be to time it so that this goes down, brings it back up, and then the other redstone moves it over, down, up, over. So we're going to have the two different components working these two gear shifts to actually function properly. So now we actually have most of, I would say, the easy part done. The next part is going to be starting to get into some of the redstone components behind this, and that's going to be putting on the redstone contacts. And so the last linear chassis we need to put down is going to be right here. And the last sticky part of this that we need to make is one right here on this side of the linear chassis. And then if we are able to, oh, apparently I'm just going to fall right away. We need to get over onto the actual mining platform again really quick. So we're going to make a nice quick jump on over here and make this sticky. And the reason we're doing that is because we are going to have one redstone contact down here and one redstone contact up here. And let's see if I'm actually capable of rotating this properly for once. Can this rotate down? There we go. So now they are connected. This is what you want to see. You want them facing into each other. You want them lit up right now, because the point of this is that we are going to indicate when the system is done coming up and it's able to cycle to the next portion of the quarry over to when these two are connected and you get a redstone signal. Now, what we need to make sure we are doing is go to the linear chassis up here and adjust it down so that it is only connected to the top redstone contact, and go to the bottom linear chassis and adjust this one down. If I can properly scroll on it, we can always hop off here if we need to. It should be scrolling down, so it's only connected to the bottom one. The reason that is so critical is because we need to make sure that when this system goes down, it's only taking this one with it. And when this system up here is staying up here, it's only keeping this one here. So you need to make sure that they get separated, the signal goes away, and then it comes back together in the end. And this should be perfectly fine for that, just like this. So there we go. We now have that part set up for the redstone. Really, the last part of this entire setup on these chassis right here is to make however many sticky that you need to use for your chests. So we'll put the chest down right here. I'm going to put down pretty much all of them that we have. What is that? 10 of them. That should be more than sufficient. You'll notice that when your system moves and then comes back up, these chests will separate and get messed up. That's because the blocks are not treated like actual blocks while they're moving. The, kind of coding behind combining them gets weird, but the benefit behind that is that the issue we ran into last episode where the system gets messed up by water and lava, this system does not, because the blocks are basically not actually there. Water and lava will go through them, the system won't get messed up, so you don't need to worry about that ever. So kind of a give and take on that front. But now we are actually ready to start setting up the redstone portion of this. And the way we set it up is going to be kind of convoluted because we want to make sure that we are not supplying redstone power to the wrong areas, and we're not supplying eventually rotational power before things are ready. Now we are actually going to be building out a little bit of a platform up here to work on. And I believe our best bet for this one is to come down one and then make the platform over here. And we're going to try and do 2 platforms for the different redstone areas. We're going to do one for the redstone that's working on the gear shift, which is going to be a timed one. And then the redstone for up here is going to be a lot easier to work with for the sequenced gear shift, as we're basically just going to be running the redstone into the gear shift itself. And that's it. Nothing super fancy. It's just very, very simple. So first things first, we can do the one up here. I said it earlier, but the reason that we are using these encased belts is because we can run redstone on top of them, which is exactly what we want. And you can see right here, the reason that we're doing this is because when this redstone contact comes in contact again, no matter where it is on this line, no matter how many down it is, it will give a redstone signal. And then the redstone is going to initiate this sequence gear shift to move it over. And so the only thing that we need to do with this is put down an adjustable repeater. And we're going to put down the adjustable repeater right here, and we're going to scroll it up to, I'm going to do 10 seconds. Now, the reason we are doing this is because when this system gives the redstone signal, it is going to move. The signal is going to cut out until it's done moving, in this case 2 blocks, then the signal is going to kick in again. Every time the sequenced gear shift gets a new signal, it resets and will move it again. It resets this code in it basically and runs it again. If it has a continuous signal, it does not reset it. So the important part here is that the time delay on this is long enough that when the system moves and stops, whatever interval of time that is, the signal is still being output by this repeater, and the new signal will come in and then keep it as a continuous one into this sequenced gear shift so it does not move it again. So by doing 10 seconds, it's maybe a little bit overkill on time, but for those of you that have, wider setups or stuff like that, this will prevent that from being an issue. So you can see initially you will have a delay. When your system gets back up, there will be a 10-second delay before it moves, but now we have redstone being input in here. And if we were to have rotational power, it would be going through the first iteration of moving it over to, and then it will go again. Now that we have this set up, we don't need to worry. When we input rotational power to the system, we're actually going to have to break this, I believe, and have it cycle through again before it triggers, because we already have the redstone signal in here. Now that we have that, that's the easier one of the two to actually make work. And I guess a side note is when you make this really long right here, and you eventually go, 20 blocks in this direction, 30 blocks, you are going to need to make sure you extend the redstone signal using repeaters. And the place that you will put down the repeater is going to be at whatever intervals your redstone contact is not at. So obviously here, the redstone contact is the second block. So you're going to want to make sure that the repeaters are on top of blocks 1, 3, 5, so on and so forth. If they are on blocks 2, 4, 6, anything like that. And of course, like I said, that will change if you have, if yours is 3 wide, it needs to not be on the 3, the 6, the 9. It just needs to make sure that you will have a redstone dust wherever the contact is, because it needs to be able to give off the signal to this line right here. But again, if you make it super long, you will need to make sure that when it gets all the way down, your redstone signal makes it back here with enough power to actually trigger this. So something to keep in mind if you're making a very large setup. We don't need to deal with it today. We can go all the way down with no issue, but just something that you might need to, be wary of when you actually are making this on a large scale. Now we need to make the timed portion of this, which is really going to come down to experimental trials, because for the most part, you're not going to be able to know exactly the amount of time it's going to take to mine down and up. I can't tell you. You're going to be starting at different Y levels. You're going to be, going down to different levels. I'm not going to be able to tell you. Your rotational speed is going to be different. So we're basically going to experiment on it too, but we're going to be using the adjustable pulse repeater, the powered toggle latch, and the regular adjustable repeater for this. So the powered toggle latch, we're going to put down right here into the gear shift. And what this does is when it receives a redstone signal, it flips the lever. The reason it's important is because we are going to be giving pulses to this system every time we need it to change. And we're going to have to go sleep in a second, but this will mean that when we give it a pulse, it sends it down, and it keeps going down because this needs a continuous signal. And then when we send it a pulse again, the signal stops, this will shift the rotation, and it will bring it up, and it will keep coming up until it flips again. So having that right there is going to allow us to pulse a timer into it repeatedly, cycling it back and forth between going down and coming up. Now we can get rid of this right here and move this over so that we can actually go up to our redstone setup. I believe we don't need those blocks anymore. So we can come over here and make another ladder up to this. Again, one of the pains of assembling this setup is having to do this, but it's okay. We'll be done soon enough. So we need the redstone to go in there. And so we're going to put down redstone dust right here that leads into it. And we're going to set up the timer. We're going to extend this over one more, and the timer is going to go right here. And so we're going to put down the adjustable pulse repeater like this. We're going to put down the adjustable repeater facing in the other direction. And much like vanilla redstone clocks, we're going to make a loop. And so right here, this is going to be left at 1 tick. Right here, this time on the pulse repeater that we're setting, is we're going to set this to whatever time we think it is going to take. And unfortunately, once you get to a minute, it's only going to go in minute intervals. So unless you want to put down a second one to delay this by a number of seconds, if you want to keep using one, you're going to go in minute intervals, but you're going to put down how long you think it's going to take for whichever one you think is going to be longer, going down all the way to bedrock or coming back up and moving over one. You need to remember that that needs to be included, because if either parts of this system are moving and the other one tries to move, so the vertical movement's occurring and the horizontal movement tries to occur, it's not going to work. So if the timer goes off, it's going to get screwed up if your system is moving horizontally. So in this case, I think 5 minutes should be enough. It's better to start on the longer end so you get all the way down to bedrock and the machine halts for a bit and then comes back up on your first run, than that you don't get low enough and the system doesn't make it all the way down and you miss out on some of the mining. Once you have that done, you can easily just come over and scroll down on this and adjust it for the second portion of it to see what your time will be. And once you know what it'll be, you'll be all good to go. Obviously, if you're starting at the same Y level every time with the same rotational power, it's not going to change after that. So I'm setting it to 5 minutes. The reason we need this adjustable repeater here is we need a 1 tick separation. The pulse repeater puts out a pulse. So if we don't have this here, it's going to power itself while it's giving off power, and then it's not going to fire again. With the 1 tick adjustable repeater here, it is going to go through, power itself again, and keep a loop going of 5 minutes and 1 tick. So every 5 minutes and 1 tick, this system is going to flip its redstone position and adjust going down and up. So again, that's how you make that timer right there. Not super complicated. And we're going to put down a button, which is going to allow us to initiate this setup. So if we push this button right here, you can see that what should happen is this will slowly light up over here because it's been powered, and it's going to take a really, really long time because it's set at 5 minutes. But the visual here, this square will slowly light up as it gets closer to firing off a pulse. And you can see this right here, because it was powered initially with the power coming through this, it is now powered, meaning that the rotation is reversed. The lever is on. The next pulse that comes through here, and you can see that the color is slowly changing compared to this one. Well, the next pulse that comes through here will flip the lever off and it will go back to its initial rotational position. The important thing is we need to see which way the windmill is rotating at the beginning so that we know which way this needs to be as a baseline. It does not matter which way it's rotating. What matters though is if we give this power to start before it starts or if we don't. Because whatever starting position this needs to be in, we need to just have it there before the system starts moving. If it needs to be powered on right now and the system now were to start, then the first cycle would set it off. The system could go down. The next one would bring it up and then it'll move. If it needed to be off, then it'll be fine. We just want to make sure that it starts in the correct one. Otherwise, we're going to be sitting here waiting for it to cycle through for 5 minutes before it starts. Instead, we could just manually adjust it ourselves by, pushing a button, flipping a lever to manually switch this one. But now we have that. You'll be able to see that this will continue firing. And the last thing we really need to do for this is going to be combine these into one rotational input and set up our windmill. So to do this, it's really simple. I'm going to choose to use some shafts. and some of the encased belts. And we can come over and bring these out so that we're able to actually work with them. And we can bring this out one also. And unfortunately, if these were perfectly diagonal, we would be able to just use a mechanical belt between these, but they're not. So we are going to put down like this over here. And if it'll actually allow me to properly rotate that, there we go. And I thought I brought with me a regular belt too to adjust this with and connect these two, but I guess I didn't. So we can just put this down and we'll just build a staircase up here so we don't have to keep getting rid of it. We can put that down and build it up to the top, and let's flip this. So there we go. So now all we need is to input rotation into this right here, and the entire system will get it all the way down, and it'll actually probably start running, which is why we're going to want to be careful when we connect this, because we might run into a thing that we need to manually adjust. So what we can do now is go and assemble. We'll build up, and we're going to assemble the windmill. This is more of an aesthetic thing since we've already done this before, but we'll build out here so that we have a nice little area to work with while we set up the mechanical bearing. I'm actually going to set it up and then break that shaft right there so that we do not immediately give it rotational power. So let's set up the mechanical bearing, and that should be good. And then we're going to, like I said, break this shaft right here so that we're not immediately giving it power. And then we're going to put down the radial chassis right here and make all the sides of it sticky. Got to come over here, get the bottom sticky, all the sides sticky. Great. And then we're going to start building our windmill, and we're going to do one very similar to the one we did at the base. I don't know how far we are from the ground though, which really is my important question at this point. How many blocks are we from the ground? Can we do 4? Are we able to do 4 blocks? I'm going to assume that we're able to do 4. So we're just going to go 4 on each side. 4 like that. And we're going to put down a lever because I want to see which direction this is going to rotate. So we'll put down a lever here, flip it. Okay, guys, so I was attempting to rotate it, and I didn't realize that I didn't have a single sail block on there. So we put one down, we flip it, and we can now see the direction that it is rotating in. So there we go. We can set up the remainder of the sail blocks on this portion like that if we just want it to look kind of nice. And then we can start setting up the rest of the sides. So again, we're going to put down the 4 blocks. We're not even going to be able to make it out all the way on these sides without kind of hopping over on this one. Like so. Get 4 right there. And set up the sail blocks here so we get at least a decent amount of capability with this. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. Like that. So yes, we are far enough away from the ground to set up a pretty mediocre windmill here, but it'll be sufficient for this. If I could actually place down blocks, and I don't have my axe and my hotbar, so yes, I am mining the oak log with a pickaxe. But there we go, and then we'll place down the remainder of the wool here, and there we go. We've got our windmill, we're ready to go with that. We can get rid of this and clean it up, and we're going to go up here for the last time. Thankfully, I should actually eat so that we heal and don't die. But then we should be able to head on up here, flip the lever up at the top there, and connect these and make sure that the system is actually able to function properly. So we flip this and it's rotating. And if we wanted to speed this up, we could. We don't actually have to. I did bring stuff to speed it up, but I don't actually think we're going to right now. It should be rotating at a sufficient speed with this setup to function however I want it. Again, though, all you need to do is increase its speed if you want to use if you want to use anything, you could use where is it in here? The rotation speed controller is one of the easy options, using, cog wheels, large to small to adjust it, and double up, whatever you want to do, we can hook it up right here. And when we flick this on, what's going to happen is the setup is actually either going to go down or it's going to come up. I don't think it's going to move. So we're going to want to flip this and see what it is doing. Okay, so our setup is going down. So our system is actually correct, but I'm going to break this right here. And I'm going to leave that until this setup stops. So we're going to go sleep and we'll come back up. But the reason we're doing that is because our timer is not currently aligned with the setup. But we'll look at the time right now and I'm going to see how long it takes for it to go down. But you can see now that the setup is going down. It's very slow, which is why you might want to up the speed over here. But because it's fully automated, again, the speed is not a massive concern. The point is you'll be able to flick this on, leave it, and then come back whenever you want. But if you see, it is now mining everything. The blocks are going to go into those chests right there. It will go all the way down. The chest separated like we thought. But if we come back up top, and this will probably actually take more than 5 minutes, as I suspected with the speed we're going at, because I did not up the speed. But if we come back up here, and I'm going to make a ladder up here so that we can go up now. Now that we know where everything is going, we're able to come back up. There we go. We can see that this is actually about to fire again. Once it fires, we should be able to reconnect it. But it's going all the way down, sinking down. I think this is so awesome to watch. And what we can actually do, I guess, if we wanted to, is let's actually reconnect this. And I'm going to do this as an example because right now the quarry functions properly. What I want to show you is it coming back up when this ends up firing and then moving over, because really that is the next portion of this. And the critical part is to see what direction this is moving in. I believe because it's moving forward and this is rotating this way, it is rotating counterclockwise, that the movement should be to the left with it moving forward. So once this pulse fires, and obviously it's very dark red right now, so it could take anywhere from a minute to, a couple seconds before it fires off, but we'll get to see it flip the lever, bring the system back up, we'll get to check the chests, and we'll get to see it move over one. But pretty much the main setup is completed now. I know that this was a relatively long video. It's a little bit rambly, but I wanted to basically go over every single component of this so that you know when you set it up why you might need to adjust things if you make it longer, why you might want to speed it up, why you might need to make this longer, adjust the size of it, adjust the timing on the redstone, all those different things. But in general, this setup is going to be the closest thing that you can get to a quarry in Create. So now you can see that this fired off, it flipped this, the system should be coming back up, it'll be relatively quick, it won't be mining anything, and I am going to put down some stone. You can honestly put it down right over here. It's a shame that I can put it down like this, and then this, and I'm just going to mine this out, keep it as clean as we can, but that we can come up here and watch this work now. So you can see it's coming back up. We're not going to probably have any ore in the chest, but we are going to have dirt and stone. And once it gets back up to the top up here, it is going to fire this off and take 10 seconds before it moves it 2 positions over to the next interval where it is going to go down. So if I wanted to bring it back, I could actually manually bring the setup back to this current initial position if I wanted to finish mining this out by using the sequence gear shift here, attaching a button to it, switching the distance or the direction the piston's coming in to backwards, pushing the button, and it would shift it back to. So with this setup, if you actually want to move it back because you do something like I did, you mess something up and it's not mining all the way down and you need to adjust something, that is how you can manually fix it. But you shouldn't really run into any issues with that. We can see it's coming back up now. This isn't even close to firing off again, which is great. 5 minutes is a fairly long time to wait. It probably fired off one other time during the video, but you can see it's coming up now. Again, very slow. If you do want to speed this up, it is completely understandable. I don't see a huge need just because this is something that I would press the button on and leave for probably like 2 hours to go make food and come back and it'll be good. But once it is up at the top, it'll stop. Right now, if we were to jump on this, we would fall all the way through because these are not actually blocks right now. They're invisible. They are, not usable. Well, actually, I think they actually are. Technically, they're invisible to things around it. I think we could stand on them because it's almost like an elevator. But you can see now that it is pushing it. I was wondering why it looked like everything was moving away. I forgot that that was about to happen. I swear I thought everything was moving away from us. And I was a little bit concerned. But you can see now that it is pushing it, and it is extending it over 2 blocks. Okay guys, so this is actually one pitfall that was shown perfectly here due to the rotational speed of this. And it's easy to fix, but you can see that the system is all the way over there now. And we are actually going to cut the redstone down here so I can show you this, but it is over there because the 10 seconds with our current rotational speed was not enough. To get this moved over to redstone signal to come back and power this was actually more than 10 seconds. If it was faster, it wouldn't be an issue, but it was not able to maintain the consistent power through the repeater to the gear shift, and it was firing more than once. So an easy way for us to fix this is to manually adjust it using this button. And so what we can do is come up here, slap a button down on top while we're working. We can put this in the other direction. And if we were to actually, I guess we need to, in fact, get rid of the redstone signal. So this needs to run out so that we can manually push it because it needs a fresh redstone signal. But you're about to see why it's important that you have a sticky piston. Once this runs out, we will push the button, and we can actually set this to however many blocks away it is. In this case, it looks like it's 8 blocks away. We can set this to 8 blocks, push the button, and it's going to come back. And now we can have that there. We can leave the button there if we want. We're probably not going to have to hit it again. This is really just for the example in this episode. But this is how you bring it back to the beginning. And then we're able to reconnect it if we want to. And what'll happen is when it finishes, it will move over to again because you are going to get a fresh redstone signal coming in here, and it will adjust the way we wanted it initially, and we'll get to see it function properly since the 10-second window again was not enough, but 20 seconds is. And this is another example again of just how with the timing you need to adjust it according to your rotational speed that is coming into this, which is going to move things faster or slower depending on how your setup actually functions. So it's almost back at the beginning. This redstone signal will cut because it will be done with that movement. And then we can see that this gets power again, and it's going to take another 20 seconds before this system moves it over 1. But once it does that, we're going to be able to watch that it is able to keep a consistent signal, and the system itself will halt. And right down here, you can see that this setup fired off. We can reconnect it. If you wanted to completely stop the firing altogether, you would need to break one of these 4 that contains the loop with the actual timer in it that makes it go up and down. But of course, once you get it set up and going once, it is totally fine. So you can see now that it has redstone signal in here, and it is not going to go again until the signal is interrupted by this setup going down. So we're all good to go. It's got a consistent signal in there. And if we wanted to and came and looked here, maybe it'll be at the far chest, you can see that we've got some dirt and cobblestone filling up the far chest right here. So that is the Quarry setup, guys. I know it's a little bit of a rough video. Think of it like a template. This is probably going to be, if you guys don't have any other requests, since there really aren't any other individual machines to go over in blocks, we've covered pretty much everything other than just random builds we could make. This will probably be the last Create episode, unless you guys have any suggestions in the comments. Obviously, if there's things you guys still want to have covered, I'm happy to cover them for you, but I think we're kind of stretching it thin now with making things that, are very niche builds that people might not need, rather than going over actual things offered by the mod itself, like individual blocks. So this video was a little bit out there since it is a very large multi-block build that is a little bit niche, but I know you guys have requested some longer videos, some more, in-depth videos with cool builds, and hopefully this one was that for you. Obviously, if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the comments. This is one that I suspect people will have questions on, and I will try my best, no matter when you're commenting on the video, even if it's a while down the road, to get back to you and help you guys set this up. But I wish you guys the best of luck. Let me know in the comments if you make some insanely scaled up quarry. I would love to know how big you guys end up going with this setup. But thanks for watching, guys, and that's going to be it for today.
Standing in a glass bowl at the end of a black hole.